The stars looked cold and distant through the viewing window of the Galactic Council, ship called Harmony's Edge. Captain Zelthor stood with his forearms crossed, watching the strange yellow star grow larger as they moved closer. His crystal-like skin caught the light and threw rainbow colors across the metal walls. The Vexry captain had seen many star systems in his long life, but something about this one felt different. "Captain, we are picking up unusual energy readings from the third planet," said Chief Science Officer Krixta. The insect-like alien clicked her mandibles together as she spoke, a sign she was nervous. Her 6 legs moved quickly over the control panels as data flowed across the screens. The electromagnetic signatures suggest a young civilization, maybe a few hundred years into their industrial age. Zelthor nodded slowly. The Galactic Council always approached new worlds with care. Most young species were either too violent or too scared to make good contact. "What about the 4th planet? Any signs of advanced technology?" "Negative, Captain. But there are several large structures in orbit around it. They appear to be monitoring stations of some kind." Krixta's compound eyes glowed brighter as she focused on the data. "The technology is primitive, but functional." From across the bridge, Engineer Mulvin spoke up in his slow, wet voice. The large, slug-like creature rarely spoke unless something was wrong with the ship. "Captain, I am detecting problems with our quantum drive. The energy readings from this system are interfering with our navigation systems." Zelthor felt a chill run through his crystalline body. The quantum drive was what allowed them to travel between stars. Without it, they would be trapped in this unknown system. "How serious is the problem, Mulvin?" "Very serious, Captain. The drive is shutting down to prevent damage. We have maybe 1 hour before we lose all power to the main engines." Mulvin's ice talks drooped with worry. "I can try to fix it, but we will be stuck here until repairs are complete." The bridge went quiet except for the hum of the ship's systems. Being stranded in an unknown system with a primitive species was not ideal. Most young civilizations either tried to attack visitors or ran away in fear. Neither option was good for a science vessel with limited weapons. "Send out our standard distress beacon," Zelthor ordered. "Maybe someone will pick it up and offer help." "Captain, should we really be asking for help from such a primitive species?" Krixta asked. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. What could they possibly do?" Before Zelthor could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. The quantum drive had failed completely, and they were now drifting on emergency power toward the inner planets of the system. Far away on a small space station orbiting Earth, communications specialist Lisa Murphy was having a boring night shift. She sat at her console, drinking cold coffee and reading reports about satellite maintenance. The deep space monitoring station called Aurora Base was usually quiet, with nothing more exciting than space debris to track. Then her equipment started beeping. Lisa sat up straight and stared at her screens. The signal was unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was clearly artificial, but the patterns were completely foreign. The transmission was coming from somewhere near Jupiter, moving slowly toward the inner solar system. "Holy cow," Lisa whispered to herself. She had been trained for this moment, but she never thought it would actually happen. First contact protocols were something they practiced, but never expected to use. Lisa's hands shook as she activated the emergency communication system. Within minutes, her message was racing toward Earth at the speed of light. At NASA headquarters, Dr. Jake Collins was pulled out of bed by a phone call that would change his life forever. Jake was a xenobiologist, scientist who studied the possibility of alien life. He had spent years preparing for the moment when humanity would meet another intelligent species. Now that moment had arrived, and he felt both excited and terrified. "Are you sure the signal is artificial?" Jake asked as he rushed into the NASA control center. His brown hair was messy from sleep, and he was still wearing his old college t-shirt. "Completely sure, Dr. Collins," replied Director Helen Clark. "The patterns are too complex to be natural. Someone or something is trying to communicate with us." Jake studied the data streaming in from Aurora Base. The signal was definitely a distress call, and it was getting stronger as the source moved closer to Earth. "They're in trouble," he said. "This looks like a standard emergency beacon, just using technology we don't recognize." "What do you recommend?" Director Clark asked. Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's future. In the universe, we help them. If we want aliens to be friendly to us, we need to be friendly to them first. Within hours, the human deep space vessel New Horizon was racing toward the alien ship. Jake stood on the bridge with Captain Ron Blake, watching the strange vessel grow larger on their screens. The alien ship was beautiful, with smooth curves and a blue glow that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "It's bigger than we expected," Captain Blake said. "About twice the size of our largest ships." Jake nodded, but he was more interested in the design than the size. The alien ship looked like it had been grown rather than built. There were no sharp edges or obvious weapons. "They don't look like they want to fight," he said. "Let's hope you're right, Doc." The first communication between the two ships was awkward. The aliens had translation technology that was far better than anything humans had developed. But cultural differences made simple conversations complicated. Captain Zelthor was polite but clearly surprised that such a primitive species was offering to help. "Your offer is generous," Zelthor said through the translation system. "But our technology is far more advanced than yours. I do not see how you could possibly repair our quantum drive." Jake smiled as he responded. "Maybe we can't fix your engines, but we can tow your ship to a safe place while you make repairs. Sometimes the simplest solutions work best." There was a long pause before Zelthor responded. "You would do this for strangers, without asking for payment or technology in return?" "That's what neighbors do," Jake said simply. "We help each other." The concept seemed to confuse the aliens, but they agreed to the plan. The New Horizon used its towing cables to pull the much larger alien ship toward Earth's moon, where there was a repair station that could provide power and basic materials. During the slow journey, members of both crews visited each other's ships. Jake was amazed by the alien technology, but he was more interested in learning about the different species aboard the Harmony's Edge. Captain Zelthor was a Vexari, a race of crystal-based beings who lived for thousands of years. Science Officer Krixta was a Zephyrian, an insect-like species known for their intelligence and curiosity. Engineer Mulvin was a gastropod, slug-like race that had incredible technical skills. The aliens were equally curious about humans, though they seemed to think Earth was a unusually dangerous world. "Your planet has such extreme weather," Krixta observed, "and so many large predators. How did your species survive long enough to develop civilization?" Jake laughed. "I guess we're tougher than we look." What Jake didn't know was that this simple conversation would soon prove to be more accurate than anyone could imagine. Yes. The aliens saw humans as a weak but friendly species that had been lucky to survive on their dangerous world. They had the idea that Earth's harsh. The environment had created something the galaxy had never seen before. As the two ships slowly made their way toward Luna Station, friendships began to form between the crews. The aliens shared stories of the Galactic Council and the many worlds they had visited. The humans told stories of Earth's history and their dreams of exploring the stars. Captain Zelthor found himself impressed by the humans' curiosity and willingness to help strangers. Most species the Council encountered were either too aggressive or too fearful to make good allies. These humans seemed different, though he couldn't quite figure out how. "They're an interesting species," he told Krixta, as they watched Earth grow larger through the viewing window. "Peaceful, but not weak. Curious, but not reckless." "Yes," Krixta agreed, "but I wonder how they would react under real pressure. It is easy to be peaceful when there is no danger." Neither alien realized that they would soon find out exactly how. Humans reacted to danger, and the answer would change their understanding of the galaxy forever. 3 days had passed since the alien ship arrived at Luna Station. The human engineers worked alongside Engineer Mulvin to repair the quantum drive. While the alien crew learned about human culture and technology, Dr. Jake Kalin spent most of his time talking with the aliens, asking questions about their worlds and the Galactic Council. Captain Zelthor watched the humans work with growing respect. They might not have advanced technology, but they were clever and determined. When the human engineers couldn't understand the alien systems, they found creative ways to provide the power and materials that Mulvin needed for repairs. Your species is more resourceful than we first believed, Zelthor told Jake, as they stood in the observation deck of Luna Station. Earth hung in the black sky like a blue and white jewel. Most young civilizations we meet are either too aggressive or too primitive to be helpful. Jake smiled. We've had to be resourceful. Earth isn't always a friendly place to live, as we have noticed that your world is quite dangerous by galactic standards. Most civilized worlds have eliminated their large predators and controlled their weather patterns. Zelthor's crystal skin flickered with different colors as he spoke, a sign that he was thinking carefully. This gives me an idea for how we might repay your kindness. The next morning, Zelthor called a meeting in the station's main conference room. Jake sat at the table with Captain Blake and several other NASA officials. The 3 alien crew members stood at the other end of the room, their different body types making the humans look very similar by comparison. We wish to invite your species to participate in a traditional trial, Zelthor announced. It is how the Galactic Council determines if a new species is ready for membership. Director Clark leaned forward in her chair. What kind of trial? Science Officer Krixta stepped forward, her mandibles clicking with excitement. There is a world called Kethmaron that we use for character assessment. It is a place where species prove their worth by surviving in challenging conditions. Challenging how? Jake asked. Mulvin S. Icetalk swayed as he spoke in his slow voice. Kethmaron is what you might call a death world. It has dangerous predators and hostile environments. Most species send their finest warriors with advanced equipment and barely survive a few days. Captain Blake frowned. And you want us to go to this death world? Not as a test, Zelthor said quickly, as our guests. We would like to show you what the galaxy considers dangerous, and demonstrate how Council species handle such challenges. It would be an educational exchange. Jake's eyes lit up with interest. A real alien world with unknown life forms was exactly what he had dreamed about studying. What kind of predators are we talking about? Krixta pulled up a holographic display showing a jungle world with strange glowing plants. The ecosystem is quite complex. There are many species of hunters, from small pack animals to large solitary predators. The plant life is also dangerous in some areas. The largest predators are called ravagers, Mulvin added. Yes, they are the apex species on Kethmaron. 12 feet tall, 6 limbs, natural armor, and intelligence close to sentient levels. Even our best weapons have trouble with them. Fortunately, Zelthor said, we would be visiting a relatively safe area. The monitoring station we need to reach is in a region with only moderate dangers. It should be quite manageable with proper equipment. Director Clark looked worried. Sounds extremely dangerous for our people. We would provide environmental suits and escort you personally, Zelthor assured her. This is meant to be a cultural exchange, not a survival test. We simply want to share our experiences and learn more about human capabilities. Jake looked at the holographic jungle, his scientific curiosity winning over his common sense. I'd like to volunteer. Jake, you're a scientist, not a soldier, Captain Blake said. Exactly. I'm the best person to study alien ecosystems and life forms. This is the chance of a lifetime. After much discussion, it was decided that 3 humans would join the alien expedition. Dr. Jake Collins would serve as the mission scientist. Marine Sergeant Ben Torres would provide security expertise. Environmental specialist Amy Walsh would help with survival and navigation. 2 days later, the joint team stood in the cargo bay of the Harmony's Edge as it approached Kethmaron. Jake stared out at the planet below, amazed by its beauty. World was covered in green and blue swirls, with massive storm systems that looked like hurricanes but moved in strange patterns. The atmosphere is breathable for most species, Krixta explained as she handed out equipment. These environmental suits will protect you from toxic plants and provide basic life support. They are standard issue for Council exploration teams. Sergeant. Torres examined his suit carefully. The big Marine had been quiet during the journey, studying everything the aliens told them about Kethmaron's dangers. He was experienced in jungle warfare on Earth, but this would be completely different. Amy Walsh was excited but nervous. She had spent years studying extreme environments on Earth, from the Amazon rainforest to the Arctic tundra. An alien jungle would be the ultimate challenge for her skills. Remember, Zelthor said as they prepared to land, "This is not a competition or a test. We are simply reaching the old monitoring station to complete our own council requirements. You are here as observers and guests." The landing shuttle touched down in a clearing surrounded by tall trees that glowed with soft blue light. The moment the doors opened, Jake was hit by the smell of the alien jungle. It was like Earth's rainforests, but with strange chemical scents that made his nose tingle. "Stay close to the group," Captain Zelthor warned as they stepped outside. "Even in this safe area, there are creatures that could be dangerous to the unprepared." The alien team carried advanced energy weapons that hummed with power. Their personal shields created shimmering barriers around their bodies. By comparison, the humans looked almost helpless with their basic survival gear and simple tools as they walked into the jungle. Jake was amazed by everything he saw. Plants that moved without wind, flowers that changed colors when they approached, and insects that looked like living jewels. He took notes constantly, trying to record every detail. Amy was studying the terrain and weather patterns. The jungle was similar to Earth's tropical forests in some ways, but the climate seemed more stable. There were no signs of recent storms, and the humidity was perfectly balanced. Sergeant Torres watched for threats. His military training made him notice things the scientists missed. The way certain plants grew suggested large animals passed through regularly. Scratch marks on trees showed where predators marked their territory. The jungle might look beautiful, but it was definitely dangerous. On their first night, the team made camp in a clearing that the aliens said was safe. As darkness fell, the jungle came alive with sounds. Strange calls echoed through the trees, some musical and others threatening. Bioluminescent plants began to glow brighter, turning the forest into a fairy tale landscape. "The nocturnal hunters are becoming active," Krixta explained as she checked her weapons. "Nothing too dangerous should approach our camp, but we will keep watch." Around midnight, the first test came. A pack of creatures about the size of wolves approached the camp. They had 6 legs and glowing eyes, and they moved through the trees like cats. The aliens quickly dispatched them with precise energy blasts, the creatures falling silently to the jungle floor. Kethmoran tree stalkers, Mulvin identified. Pack hunters, but not very intelligent. They are more curious than aggressive. Examined one of the dead creatures with fascination. Its muscle structure was completely different from Earth's animals. It's adapted for climbing and jumping through the forest canopy. Amazing. They're like a cross between a cat and a monkey, but with completely different bone structure. Sergeant Torres studied the creatures too, but from a tactical perspective. They hunt in coordinated groups, smart enough to test our defenses. Before committing to an attack, Amy noticed how the pack had approached from downwind, using the jungle's natural sounds to mask their movement. They understand their environment perfectly. Every advantage the forest offers, they know how to use. The aliens were impressed by the humans' different perspectives on the same encounter. Most species they worked with focused on either the scientific aspects or the security concerns, but rarely both at once. "Your species has an interesting way of looking at problems," Zelthor observed. "You seem to combine multiple approaches simultaneously." "You've had two," Jake replied. "On Earth, understanding nature means understanding both how it works and how it can kill you." The aliens exchanged glances at this comment, but they didn't fully understand what Jake meant. In their experience, civilized species either conquered their worlds completely or were conquered by them. The idea of living in balance with dangerous environments was foreign to them. As the night continued, more small predators tested the camp's defenses. Each time, the aliens efficiently eliminated the threats with their advanced weapons. The humans watched and learned, noting how each creature behaved and what techniques the aliens used to defeat them. "Tomorrow we will reach the monitoring station," Zelthor announced as dawn broke over the jungle. "It is only a few hours' walk through terrain similar to what we have already seen." The second day on Kethmoran began with strange bird-like calls echoing through the jungle canopy. Jake woke up feeling more excited than tired. Despite spending half the night taking notes about the nocturnal creatures they had encountered, every plant and animal on this world was completely new to science. and he felt like a kid in the biggest toy store ever built. Amy was already awake, studying the weather patterns through the glowing trees. "Storm coming from the east," she announced. "Quietly, nothing serious, but we'll want to find shelter in a few hours." Sergeant Torres was checking his basic survival gear while watching the aliens prepare their advanced equipment. The energy weapons hummed to life as Zelthor and his team ran their morning diagnostics. Their personal shields flickered on and off as they tested the systems. "The monitoring station is approximately 6 kilometers through the jungle," Krixta announced as she consulted her navigation device. "The terrain becomes more challenging as we get deeper, but nothing that should cause serious problems." As they broke camp and began walking, Jake continued to be amazed by everything around him. The jungle was like a living cathedral, with trees that stretched up hundreds of feet and created a canopy so thick that very little sunlight reached the ground. Instead, the plants themselves provided light through bioluminescence, creating a soft green and blue glow that made everything look magical. "How do the plants get energy without sunlight?" Jake asked Krixta as they walked. "Many of them are partially chemosynthetic," the insect-like scientist replied. "They process minerals from the soil and volcanic gases from deep underground. It makes for a very stable ecosystem that doesn't depend entirely on their sun." Amy was fascinated by how well adapted everything seemed to be. The plants grew in perfect harmony with each other, creating natural pathways that were easy to follow. The soil was rich and dark, with a complex system of roots and fungal networks that seemed to connect everything together. Sergeant Torres was more interested in the tactical situation. As they moved deeper into the jungle, he noticed that the smaller predators were becoming less common. Either they were getting better at hiding, or something was keeping them away from this area. "Have you noticed how quiet it's getting?" Torres asked Jake during a rest stop. Jake paused his note-taking and listened. Torres was right. The constant background noise of insects and small animals that had filled the jungle near their landing site was much quieter here. Maybe we're entering a different ecosystem, or we're entering something's hunting ground. Torres replied grimly. Their conversation was interrupted by Mulvan's wet voice calling from ahead. "Captain, I am detecting unusual readings on my sensors." Zelthor moved quickly to examine Mulvan's equipment. The slug-like engineer was pointing his scanner at a large tree about 50 meters away. The readings showed heat signatures and chemical traces that made the captain's crystal skin flicker with concern. "What is it?" Jake asked, approaching the group. "Territorial markings," Krixta said, her mandibles clicking nervously. "Something large has been claiming this area as its hunting ground." Amy knelt down to examine scratches on a nearby tree trunk. The marks were deep gouges that went through the bark and into the hard wood beneath. Whatever made them had claws longer than her fingers and the strength to tear through solid tree trunk like paper. "These are fresh," she said quietly. "Maybe a day or two old?" Sergeant Torres examined the scratches from a different angle. "Look at the spacing. These claws are arranged differently than anything I've seen. It's not like a bear or a big cat." Zelthor was studying his own scanner readings with growing alarm. "The chemical signature matches records in our database. These markings were made by a Kethmoran Ravager." The name sent a chill through the group. Even though the aliens had mentioned Ravagers before, seeing evidence of one so close made the danger suddenly real. "I thought you said this was a safe area," Amy said. "It should be," Zelthor replied, but his voice was uncertain. "Ravagers usually stay in the deeper parts of the jungle, where prey is more abundant. This one must be young or driven from its normal territory." Krixta was scanning the area with her compound eyes, trying to spot any movement in the dense vegetation. "Ravagers are highly intelligent. If one is in this area, it already knows we are here. Should we turn back?" Jake asked, though part of him was curious to see this apex predator that had the aliens so worried. "The monitoring station is only 2 kilometers ahead," Zelthor said after checking his navigation equipment. "We can reach it quickly and complete our mission. Once we activate the station, we can call for immediate pickup." Torres didn't like the plan, but he understood the logic. Moving forward to a defensible position was better than retreating through open jungle where a predator could attack from any direction. As they continued walking, Jake found himself studying every detail of the Ravager's territory. The creature was obviously intelligent, using the natural features of the jungle to its advantage. Fallen logs were arranged to create choke points where prey would be forced to slow down. Certain plants were damaged in ways that would drive smaller animals toward specific areas. "This thing is a tactical genius," Torres observed as he noticed the same patterns. "It's turned this whole section of jungle into a hunting maze." "Ravagers are known to be nearly as intelligent as most sentient species," Mulvan explained. "Use tools, plan complex hunts, and can even solve puzzles. They are apex predators, not just because of their physical abilities, but because of their minds." Amy was studying the territorial markers they continued to find. Territory. It's communicating. These marks are too elaborate to be simple territorial displays. Jake looked at the scratches and chemical traces with new understanding. "You're right, it's like a language. The creature is telling other animals what kind of prey it prefers, what areas are off limits, maybe even what time of day it hunts. Which means it probably knows exactly what we are and what we're doing here," Torres concluded grimly. As if summoned by their conversation, a deep rumbling sound echoed through the jungle around them. It wasn't quite a roar, it wasn't quite a growl, but something that seemed to combine the worst features of both. The sound was intelligent, purposeful, and very close. The aliens immediately raised their energy weapons and activated their personal shields. The advanced technology hummed to life, creating barriers of crackling energy around each team member. "Stay close together," Zelthor ordered. Ravagers prefer to isolate their prey before attacking. The jungle around them had gone completely silent. Even the ever-present buzz of insects had stopped, as if every living thing was holding its breath. Jake felt his heart racing as he realized they were being watched by something that could kill them all without much effort. "There," Amy whispered, pointing at a shadow moving between the trees about 100 meters away. Jake saw it too, and his breath caught in his throat. The Ravager was enormous, even bigger than the aliens had described. It moved on 6 powerful limbs with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for something so large. Its body was covered in natural armor that looked like it could stop bullets, and its head was filled with intelligence that burned in eyes the size of dinner plates. "It's beautiful," Jake whispered before he could stop himself. Torres stared at him in disbelief. "Beautiful? That thing could tear us apart in seconds. That's what makes it beautiful," Jake replied. Perfect adaptation. Millions of years of evolution created the ultimate hunter. The Ravager paused in its movement, as if it had heard Jake's words and was considering them. For a moment, predator and prey stared at each other across the jungle clearing. Jake felt a strange sense of recognition, as if he was looking at something familiar despite having never seen anything like it before. Then the moment was broken as the creature melted back into the shadows, disappearing as silently as it had appeared. "Didn't it attack?" Krixta asked, her voice shaking slightly.
"Yes."
"It's studying us," Jake realized, "just like we're studying it. The creature wants to understand what we are before it decides what to do with us." Zelthor checked his scanner readings. "The monitoring station is just ahead. If we move quickly, we can reach it before the Ravager decides to make its move." But as they hurried through the jungle, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't really escaping. The Ravager was letting them go, following at a distance, while it learned everything it could about these strange intruders in its territory. The monitoring station appeared ahead of them. A small building made of the same crystal material as the alien ship. It looked like safety after the tension of the jungle, but Jake suspected their real test was just beginning. As they approached the station, another rumbling call echoed through the trees around them. This time it sounded different, more complex. Jake realized with growing dread that the Ravager wasn't just communicating its presence anymore. It was announcing that the hunt had begun. The monitoring station looked like a small crystal tower growing out of the jungle floor. Its walls glowed with the same soft light as the alien ship, and complex symbols moved across its surface like living writing. Zelthor approached the entrance and placed his four-fingered hand on a scanner panel. "Station is responding," he announced, as the door opened with a soft hissing sound. "We can activate the monitoring systems from inside and call for pickup once the mission is complete." Jake looked around nervously as they entered the building. The jungle had become too quiet, and he could feel eyes watching them from the shadows between the trees. Even inside the station, he didn't feel safe. The interior was larger than it appeared from outside, with several rooms filled with alien technology that hummed with power. Screens showed views of the jungle from different angles, and data flowed across displays in languages Jake couldn't read. "How long will the activation process take?" Amy asked as she watched Krixta work at one of the control panels. "Perhaps 30 minutes to complete all the required scans and data uploads," the insect-like scientist replied. "Then we can signal our ship for immediate extraction." Sergeant Torres was studying the security monitors, watching for any sign of movement in the jungle around the station. "I don't like this. We're trapped in here if that thing decides to attack." "The station is built to withstand severe weather and seismic activity," Mulvin assured him. "The walls are reinforced crystal composite. Nothing on Kethmorin can break through them." Jake wasn't so sure. He had seen the intelligence in the Ravager's eyes. He suspected the creature was far more dangerous than the aliens realized. What if it doesn't try to break in? What if it just waits for us to come out? "Then we call for backup," Zelthor said confidently. "Council security forces can deal with any predator, even a Ravager." As if the creature had heard their conversation, a deep rumbling sound echoed around the station. It was coming from multiple directions, as if the Ravager was circling the building and calling from different positions. "Well, it's testing our defenses," Torres realized. "The creature is trying to figure out how this place works." On the security monitors, they could see shadows moving between the trees. The Ravager appeared briefly in different camera views, always just long enough to be seen, before disappearing again, studying the station from every angle. "Fascinating behavior," Jake murmured as he watched the screens. "It's not just hunting us, it's trying to understand our technology." "Ravagers are problem solvers," Krixta explained, without looking up from her work. "They have been known to figure out how to open sealed containers and disable simple mechanical devices. But this station's technology is far beyond anything they could comprehend." Jake wasn't convinced. The Ravager's movements seemed too purposeful, too systematic. It was learning about the station the same way a human engineer might study an unfamiliar machine. 20 minutes into the activation process, the first real attack came. The building shook as something massive struck the outer wall with tremendous force. Emergency lights flashed, and alarm sounds filled the air. "What was that?" Amy asked, grabbing onto a console for support. Torres was watching the monitors closely. It rammed the building, testing the structural integrity. Another impact shook the station, this time from a different direction. The Ravager was hitting the walls, systematically learning exactly how strong they were and looking for weak points. "The walls are holding," Mulvin reported, checking his instruments. "But the creature is applying considerable force. It's much more than our records indicated." Ravagers were capable of... "Maybe this isn't a normal Ravager," Jake suggested. "It could be larger or stronger than average." The attacks continued for several minutes, each one precise and calculated. The creature wasn't trying to break in through brute force. It was conducting experiments, learning about their defenses, and looking for vulnerabilities. Then the attacks stopped. The jungle around the station became completely silent again. "Status report," Zelthor demanded. "All systems functional," Krixta replied. "But we have lost several external sensors. The creature damaged our monitoring equipment during its attacks." "Can you complete the activation process?" "Yes. But it will take another 15 minutes and we will be operating blind until then." Jake stared at the dark security monitors, feeling a growing sense of dread. It knows we can't see outside anymore. That's why it stopped attacking the walls. "What do you mean?" Amy asked. "It's not trying to break in. It's trying to break our equipment. The Ravager wants us scared and confused when we finally have to leave." Torres nodded grimly. "Classic predator behavior. Let's isolate the prey, damage their ability to fight back, then attack when they're weakest." "But we still have our weapons and shields," Zelthor pointed out. "Even a Ravager cannot penetrate Council military technology." Jake wished he shared the captain's confidence, but something about this situation felt wrong. The Ravager was too smart, too patient. It was planning something that went beyond a simple ambush. Activation complete, Krixta announced. I am signaling our ship for immediate pickup. New alarms started sounding, different from the impact warnings. This one was higher pitched and more urgent. What now? Torres asked. Mulvin was working frantically at his control panel. The creature has damaged our communication array. The pickup signal is not getting through. Can you fix it? Not from inside the station. Someone would have to go outside and repair the external transmitter manually. The room fell silent as everyone realized what this meant. To call for help, someone would have to leave the safety of the station and work on equipment outside while the Ravager was waiting for them. I'll go, Torres volunteered immediately. I'm trained for this kind of operation, Zelthor said. Firmly, this is our responsibility. I will make the repairs while the others provide cover with our weapons. Jake studied the schematic of the communication array on one of the screens. The transmitter was mounted on the roof of the station, completely exposed and impossible to defend from multiple angles. This is exactly what it wanted, Jake realized. The Ravager forced us into a situation where we have to split up and expose ourselves. We have no choice, Zelthor replied. Without communication, we are trapped here until the ship's crew becomes concerned about our long absence. That could be days. Amy was looking at weather data on another screen. And we have a major storm system moving in. If we don't get picked up soon, we'll be stuck here for at least a week. Jake felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. The Ravager hadn't just been studying their technology. It had been learning about their behavior, their decision-making process, even their equipment limitations. The creature had maneuvered them into this exact situation. It's been planning this from the beginning, he said quietly. The Ravager didn't just happen to find us. It's been watching Council expeditions for years, learning how the monitoring stations work and how different species react under pressure. That's impossible, Krixta protested. Ravagers are intelligent, but they're still animals. Are they? Jake asked. Or are they something more? Something the Council has been underestimating for centuries. Before anyone could answer, the building shook again. But this time, it wasn't an impact. Something was on the roof, moving around. Directly above them, you could hear scratching sounds as claws found purchase on the crystal surface. It's on top of the communication array, Torres said grimly. The creature isn't waiting for us to come outside. It's going to destroy our only way to call for help. Zelthar made a decision. We have to stop it before it finishes the job. Everyone, outside. Now, we'll use our combined firepower to drive it away. Jake grabbed his basic survival pack as the aliens checked their energy weapons one final time. His hands were shaking, but not entirely from fear. Part of him was excited to finally see the Ravager up close, to witness the ultimate product of this world's evolution as they prepared to open the station door. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to face something far more dangerous than any of them realized. The Ravager wasn't just a predator, it was a tactician. It had been planning this confrontation long before they ever set foot on Kethmorin. The door to the monitoring station opened with a soft hiss, and the team stepped into the jungle night. Above them they could hear the Ravager moving on the roof, its claws scraping against the crystal surface as it worked to destroy their communication. Equipment. Zelthor raised his energy weapon and fired at the dark shape above. The bright beam lit up the jungle for a moment before striking the creature's armored hide. The Ravager roared in pain and anger, but the weapon barely left a mark on its natural armor. Impossible, Krixta whispered. Our weapons should be more effective than that? The Ravager leaped from the roof with impossible grace for something so large. It landed in the clearing around the station and turned to face them. In the glow from their weapons and the station's lights, Jake got his first. Clear look at the apex predator. The creature was even more magnificent than he had imagined. 12 feet tall and built like a living tank, with 6 powerful limbs that could serve as either arms or legs, depending on what the situation required. Its hide was covered in overlapping plates of natural armor that gleamed like polished metal. But it was the eyes that captured Jake's attention. They burned with intelligence that was unmistakably aware, calculating, and completely focused. It's beautiful, Jake breathed, unable to help himself. It's trying to kill us, Torres snapped back, raising his rifle, even though he knew the simple projectile weapon would be useless against the creature's armor. The Ravager began moving in a slow circle around the team, staying just outside the range of their energy weapons. It was studying them, examining each team member with the careful attention of a scientist conducting an experiment. Zelthor fired again, and again the beam barely scratched the creature's hide. Our weapons are not penetrating its defenses. We need to retreat back into the station. But as they turned toward the door, they found their path blocked. The Ravager had moved with lightning speed, using its 6 limbs to position itself between the team and safety. It wasn't just hunting them, it was hurting them. It wants us out here in the open, Amy realized, away from our defenses and technology. Creature made a low rumbling sound that seemed almost like laughter. It understood their words, Jake realized with shock. The Ravager wasn't just intelligent. It had been listening to their conversations and learning their language. Mulvin tried to circle around the creature, but the Ravager cut him off effortlessly. One massive arm swept out and knocked the engineer to the ground. Mulvin's personal shield flickered and died as he hit the jungle floor hard. Mulvin, Crixta screamed, rushing toward her fallen teammate. The Ravager moved to intercept her, and Zelthar fired his weapon to distract it. This time the creature didn't even flinch as the energy beam struck its armor. It had adapted to their weapons, Jake realized. Either its hide was naturally resistant, or it had learned to position itself so the beams hit the thickest armor plates. Sergeant Torres fired his rifle, knowing it was useless, but hoping to draw the creature's attention. Off the Ravager's armor like raindrops, but the creature turned its burning eyes toward the human marine. For a moment, Predator and Soldier stared at each other across the clearing. Torres had faced dangerous animals before, but nothing like this. The Ravager wasn't just bigger and stronger than anything on Earth. It was smarter. It was planning every move, anticipating every action. The creature took a step toward Torres, then another. It was moving slowly, deliberately, like a chess master who knew the game was already won. That's when something inside Jake Collins snapped. He had spent his entire life studying nature, learning about predators and prey, evolution and survival. He understood that the Ravager was perfectly adapted to hunt the civilized species of the galaxy. Their energy weapons, their shields, their technology, even their way of thinking. The creature had encountered it all before and learned to defeat it, but the Ravager had never encountered a human before. It had never faced a species that came from a world where survival meant fighting not just other predators but the planet itself. It had never met something that evolved, not through technology, but through pure, stubborn refusal to give up. Jake dropped his scanner and survival pack. He pulled off his environmental suit, leaving him in just his basic clothes. Other team members stared at him in shock. "Jake, what are you doing?" Amy called out. "Something it doesn't expect," Jake replied quietly. He started walking toward the Ravager. The creature paused in its advance toward Torres, confused by this unexpected behavior. Its eyes focused on Jake with new interest. This small, weak-looking creature was approaching voluntarily. It made no sense according to everything the Ravager had learned about prey behavior. "Dr. Collins, get back here," Zelthor ordered. "Shh. You have no weapons, no protection." Jake ignored him, kept walking until he was standing directly in front of the massive predator. The Ravager towered over him, its clawed hands twitching as if deciding how quickly to end this strange encounter, but Jake didn't run. He didn't beg. He didn't even seem afraid. Instead, he looked up at the creature and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "I know what you are. You're not just a predator. You're a survivor, just like me." The Ravager tilted its massive head, studying this bizarre little creature that showed no fear. In all its years of hunting council species, it had never encountered behavior like this. "My species survived ice ages and volcanic winters," Jake continued. "We hunted mammoths with stone spears. We lived through plagues and disasters that would have wiped out any other species. We didn't survive because we were the strongest or the fastest or the smartest." The creature leaned closer, its massive head just inches from Jake's face. Its breath was hot and smelled of meat and jungle plants. We survived because we never gave up. No matter how impossible the odds, no matter how hopeless the situation, humans just keep fighting. Jake reached out slowly and placed his hand on the Ravager's armored snout. The creature could have killed him instantly, but something in the human's manner held it back. "You want to test yourself against something new," Jake said. "Something that doesn't follow the rules you've learned. Well, here I am." The Ravager pulled back and made a decision. This strange creature was offering a challenge unlike any it had ever faced. Not a battle of technology or weapons, but something far more primitive and pure. The attack came without warning. The Ravager's massive arm swept toward Jake with enough force to shatter bones, but Jake had been expecting it. Years of studying predator behavior had taught him to read the signs. He rolled under the creature's swing and came up behind one of its legs. Instead of trying to run, he grabbed onto the armored limb and held on as the Ravager tried to shake him off. The other team members watched in stunned silence as Jake fought the apex predator with nothing but his bare hands and his knowledge of anatomy. He wasn't trying to overpower the creature. He was using its size and strength against it. Same way human ancestors had brought down animals 10 times their size, Jake found gaps in the armor plating, where the creature's joints had to remain flexible. He pressed his thumbs into nerve clusters that made the massive legs buckle. He used leverage and momentum instead of brute force, turning the Ravager's own attacks into opportunities. The battle was brutal and desperate. The Ravager was stronger, faster, and better armed. But Jake was fighting with something the creature had never encountered before: pure human stubbornness. The absolute refusal to accept defeat even when defeat seemed certain. When one of the creature's claws raked across his shoulder, tearing through skin and muscle, Jake didn't retreat. He grabbed the claw and used it to pull himself closer, driving his elbow into a soft spot under the creature's arm when the Ravager tried to pin him to the ground. Jake twisted and fought until he broke free, then immediately attacked again. He wasn't giving the creature time to plan or adapt. He was fighting with the desperate fury of every human who had ever faced impossible odds, refused to quit. The end came suddenly. Jake found himself behind the creature's head, his arms locked around its throat. The Ravager had expected him to try choking it. The creature's neck was heavily armored against such attacks. But Jake wasn't trying to strangle the Ravager. Using anatomical knowledge gained from years of studying predators, he pressed his fingers into specific points at the base of the creature's skull. Pressure points that existed in nearly every vertebrate species, including this one. The mighty Ravager, the apex predator of an entire world, went limp and collapsed to the jungle. Jake stood over the unconscious creature, breathing hard and bleeding from a dozen wounds. The clearing was completely silent, except for the sound of his ragged breathing. "Is it dead?" Amy whispered. "No," Jake replied, "just unconscious. It'll wake up in a few hours with a terrible headache." Zelthor approached slowly, his energy weapon still raised. "How did you know where to apply pressure?" "Nerve clusters and blood flow patterns are similar across most vertebrate species," Jake explained, wiping blood from his face. "Earth has predators too. We learned how to fight them a long time ago." As if on cue, the sound of engines filled the air above them. The alien ship had detected their location when the communication array came back online during the fight.